joining us on this edition of the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. Sandeep and me wish each one of you a very, very happy Independence Day right here on ET Now from the entire team right here at this channel. Call it Prime Minister Modi's clarion call for the 2019 general election if you may, because addressing the nation from the Red Fort on the 72nd Independence Day, Modi listed out his government's achievements in the past 4 years, even as he launched some mega initiatives, including Modi Care, the much-awaited universal healthcare plan. Calling it the world's largest health insurance scheme, Modi said the Pradhan Mantri Arogya Abhiman will be rolled out on the 25th of September, the birthday of Deen Dayal Upadhyay. Touting the NDA government's economic policies, the Prime Minister said from a group of Fragile Five, India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world today.
Inimical to his style of stoking patriotic feelings with his IDA speeches, Modi said the tricolour will be unfurled in the space by 2022 when the nation celebrates the 75th Independence Day. And in a clear move to win the hearts of farmers, the Prime Minister said his government's Beej se Bazaar tak approach will benefit every stakeholder in the agrarian sector. The Prime Minister may have sounded the conch for the 2019 Maha battle, but what is the ground reality as far as the country's economy and polity is concerned, and how does one assess the fifth and the last speech of Prime Minister Modi before this term ends? That's a topic of discussion on the India Development Debate. We'll put the spotlight on the reactions of corporate India. Joining us are three very special guests. Rakesh Mittal, President CII, Shobna Kamanini, Executive Vice Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals, and Sanjeev Aga, former MD Idea Cellular and corporate commentator. Thank you all for taking time out and joining us on this special day. Mr. Aga, let me start with you. His fifth speech from the Red Fort, and of course the one before the crucial general elections in 2019. Which are the boxes that did the speech tick according to you?
Sandeep, it was a very long speech, an hour and 20 minutes, as many 15th August speeches are, but this was a little longer than average, and it did tick many boxes. But if you were asking me to, see how the Prime Minister has positioned himself, I think he's trying to get back to his promise of 2014 as being a man of destiny, and trying to separate the period before 2014 and after 2014 into two different boxes, and almost positioning this government as heralding the phase of a breakthrough or breakaway for India. So I think that was the overall overarching attempt.
Fair point indeed. I think the only contention that I may have with you is then 2018 or 2019, the Prime Minister has been tested for 5 years. So I wonder if he can go back to being a man of destiny and hope that he once did ride on in 2014. But let me take this across to CII President Rakesh Mittal, who makes his debut right here on the India Development Debate. Mr. Mittal, he did not obviously announce any big reforms or schemes. One would presume that was a given because the government is in its last year in office. Was this largely then a stock-taking speech?
Well, first of all, let me wish a very happy Independence Day to you all, including my fellow panelists. I can only say that his speech was very forward-looking and very inspirational to me. And having said that, while you did mention about that no major schemes have been announced, but what I see here is in the first 2.5 years, all the major schemes which were announced were at a macro level. And now for the last almost a year now and going forward until 2019, we are now looking at micro implementation of those policies and their schemes. And I believe that is very good, including his focus on social agenda and social justice. I think these are the things which we needed to see happening on the ground, and that's what is happening today. Also, I would say that his focus on women empowerment and social justice through Ujjwala and Saubhagya schemes were clearly the focus areas of how he is trying to reach out to each of the 125 crore citizens of India, and how his government will look at delivering those services at the doorstep of the citizens. To me, I think that was very positive. And more importantly, the thing which he mentioned about praising the honest taxpayers. I think this is something which is extremely good, and I believe this will inspire many more people to join the tax net and contribute towards nation building.
And that's a fantastic point you've raised, really, on praising taxpayers, and we couldn't welcome that more. And that's something that we do want to talk about in detail. But opening comment from you, Shobna Kamanini, how would you assess this fifth speech of Prime Minister Modi, Independence Day speech? And in some sense, would you say that, without doing any sort of politicking, in some sense, he set the agenda for 2019 and beyond? Like Mr. Aga said, went back to his sort of positioning of himself as a change agent, as someone, as a man of destiny of sorts. So in some sense, he tried to script re-script a narrative that he built so beautifully in 2014.
I couldn't agree more. I listened to the whole speech, and I didn't find it long. In fact, I found it fascinating. He owned this moment, and I think that the tone that he set, that it was completely inclusive. Rakesh went into quite great detail. Just to give you on a macro level, I don't think that he left any box unticked in his what he's done. Clearly, this has been a man who's worked tirelessly for the last 4 years in his role as Prime Minister. We cannot fault him on that. We can't fault his big vision, aspirations of how he wants to be a change agent for the country. And the big one that was really announced was health. And I think fundamentally, if we can get a healthier nation, we can move forward to look at India at 75 with greater enthusiasm, because you can't do it when you don't have the fundamental social infrastructure put into place, and he addressed that, whether it's about women, whether it's about youth. I would have liked more in terms of services and how important it is and creating jobs, but you can't really fault his entire agenda about how he spoke on every sector, how he spoke for India, and it made me proud.
Right. No, I agree with you on large parts of that, but I think I want to delve a little deeper into the point that you alluded to, the point that Mr. Mittal raised. And Sanjeev Aga, I'll come to you on this, because very often, the constituency that Prime Ministers address from the ramparts of Red Fort are farmers, is the middle class sometimes, but in a very different way, and of course, the poor. Here, the Prime Minister, for the first time, has made tax paying some sort of a virtue, because he kept referring to taxpayers multiple times in his speech, almost directly addressing them and almost saying that they are the ones, every taxpayer is going to feed, two poor families, two people in poverty. In some sense, do you believe that's the big takeaway, and is that the big green in the box on today's speech? Has he actually ended up making tax paying a virtue?
It's very hard for you or me to look at a speech and divorce it from what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years, or what might happen in the next few years. And we also don't know what goes behind, what is the motive why one says something. But I would think that there are two factors playing out here. One is, I think, genuinely the Prime Minister, and from his days as Chief Minister, has been keen to get greater tax compliance and things of that nature, and therefore this sort of fits into what has always been his desire. But on the other hand, there has been some criticism of the government of being soft on or not being completely, let's say, explicit on certain matters which have been raised in the recent past. So in a way, this is a method of controlling the narrative without becoming defensive. You speak of today and tomorrow, and how you want to give no favors, so no one should ask for any quarters, and how you want better compliance. So I think it's a bit of both. I don't know which one is dominant.
That's a fascinating point you make. But Mr. Mittal, I think the speech, like you pointed out, addresses women, addresses farmers, addresses the middle class, addresses the tax-paying citizens, but I didn't find too much of a mention of industry. And as someone who leads, the industry body CII right now, was that a bit of a miss? The fact that, and he's spoken about it in another forum, recently in UP, he spoke about the fact that we must not vilify corporate leaders, etc. But in this critical, crucial speech, there really wasn't a mention of industry, of job creation, of the potential of the services sector, like Shobna Kamineni pointed out. Would that be a miss, according to you?
Well, I don't fully agree with that. While I did mention that there is a lot which has been done in the past on industrial policies, including making some significant changes in the labor policies as well. But if you look at the Prime Minister's continuing focus on agriculture, now agriculture and food processing are intertwined, and I believe that if we have to look at doubling the farmer's income, this is something where the private sector needs to come and hugely make investments. There have been some bottlenecks which the government has tried to remove through the leasing of agriculture land on long tenure basis. A draft policy has been issued. Contract farming, a draft policy has been issued. I think the problem lies at the state level where the implementation has to take place. Having said that, he did mention about modernization and technology adoption at the agriculture level. Fisheries and beekeeping is something which is already an ongoing thing, which is diversifying the agriculture income. But I believe that time has come when we also need to looking at non-farming income for the farmers. And there he did mention about the solar farm and solar electricity, which has been a CII recommendation for a long time. And I believe solar can be a third crop for the farmer, where a consolidated, aggregated land can be utilized by private sector to put up a capital expenditure of a solar farm. And the farmers can continue doing their agriculture below. There are some pilots which are already running in the country, and they start getting rental income, which becomes a third crop for them, while they have the ownership of the land and they continue to do agriculture. And by the way, during the day they get power at cheaper rates. The state starts getting power at cheaper rates, and more importantly, the state governments who are spending 8,000, 10,000, 7,000 crores of power subsidy can be just taken away because the power is now available during the day. Hence, it's a all win-win situation.
Right.
So that is one. And
I just think for Indian agriculture to come out of a deep-rooted crisis, the win-win has to get even better. Sure, go ahead. Go ahead. Right. Go make your point on the industry, Mr. Mittal.
The IMF's projections of India will be leading the global growth. Sorry?
Make your point on industry, sir. Go ahead.
So on the industry, that's what I was saying, that IMF's projections of India, which will be leading the global growth in the next 3 decades. We are currently seeing strong positive winds as far as the industry is concerned. Auto sector, tractors, FMCG, consumer durables, all these sectors are firing very well. And very recently, in the last couple of months, we have seen almost 1 lakh crore of capital expenditure announced by various industry sectors. So that all in all is a huge positive. And I believe the time has come when we need to look at micro implementation of the policies and ensure that ease of doing business is taken even more ahead. And India's aspiration of being in the top 50 should be a target which we all need to work together.
Right.
On the services side, he did talk about Ayushman Bharat and his focus on public health, cleanliness and sanitation. I think these are the services which will generate employment.
Mr. Mittal.
And I believe while the government is doing their job,
Mr. Mittal, please bear with me. Let me just come in there.
Need to start doing their bit.
Okay. Fair point. Before we put it on the citizens, the government needs to walk the talk completely. But let me just take this across to Shobana Kamineni. You make some important points there, Mr. Mittal. But just bear with me because I want to talk about some concrete things and specific things that he did speak about. And Jan Arogya scheme was announced. It will be implemented and, executed from the 25th of September, coinciding with Deen Dayal Upadhyay's birthday. Shobana Kamineni, is India ready for a healthcare program of this nature? Are there enough funds really? Has enough allocation been done?
So first, I'd like to react to the earlier comment, and I think that the Prime Minister on Independence Day, it's not required for him to make a budget speech, and I think he ticked many of the boxes, made it very inclusive. And coming to healthcare, are we ready? I think that it is the need of the hour. If we do think about in India, India going forward, India taking its place, growth according to IMF, India at 75, you can't do that on the back of an unhealthy country. You cannot do that on the back of millions of people that don't have access to health care. So some form of it was required. The Prime Minister has taken some tested models. We do have similar insurance in states that have been working for several years now. But what he's done in his inimitable style is that he's taken it with huge aspiration and put it together. The private sector, at the beginning, we were a bit wary, but I think that we've had enough positive dialogues that we're all looking to see how we can participate. And the important thing here is to understand that A, we have to get some good transparency in there. We don't want frauds. The payments to hospitals have to come in a timely manner. 2, we have to find more infrastructure so that it's widespread, to the last corner. We have to find clever solutions, not just building hospitals, but we have to make sure that we use innovative solutions to provide healthcare. 3, wellness is going to be a huge component, because prevention is the one that will make sure that our budget doesn't spiral. Bear with me, we spend $100 today per capita on health. This is the lowest in the world, and many of our outcomes are world class. So for us to contain that budget, I think the Prime Minister taking such a step and also clubbing it with wellness, making sure that this that it's holistic over the years. Yes, it will cost more money, but in the long run, I think that the Ayushman Bharat will really be one of the great things that he's given to the nation. So we're fully supportive.
Sure, that's a good. Okay, good to hear you, since you represent the healthcare industry, saying that we are ready for it, and that the industry private sector participation is also on board, because that was a concern of a lot of stakeholders that the private sector is unlikely to come on board in this form, in this construct. But Mr. Aga, shifting focus and talking about another aspect, and obviously the critics would point that he did not refer to some of the sort of pressing national issues, like whether it is a NRC matter, the Rafale scam that's been alleged by the Congress party, the jobs issue, etc., etc. And yet, what struck for me was the way he built this whole narrative of the power of rising India, putting an Indian mission in space by on our 75th independence anniversary. So in some sense, there was this contrast. He chose to not talk about some of these issues, and yet chose to project the power of rising India, to instill a sense of national pride. So how do you view this, and did he, on balance, according to you, did he strike the right balance there?
Yeah, Sandeep, I think you have very accurately pinpointed that certain issues he chose not to address directly, but rather through a flanking move, make them appear sort of irrelevant and yesterday's issues. And similarly, as you've known, I tend to be critical of all governments, and I always like to see the glass half empty instead of half full, as indeed it was with the previous government. I do have one or two areas where I would like to look at the speech with a microscope against what the achievements on the ground have been, because after all, a speech must resonate reasonably with how things are. And on the whole, I find, in terms of social performance or economic performance, that the things which lend themselves to follow up, to result orientation, to a dashboard, for example, things like LED bulbs or LPG cylinders or electrification or road building and many other things, Jan Dhan accounts. I would say that the record of this government has been more than satisfactory. It's pretty good. The complex things which require fundamental thinking, things like how to build new cities. Rakesh talked of how to build linkages so that you have more value added agricultural produce. Even health, I have not, at least maybe there are, but I haven't come across a thought paper which puts together from anywhere, which puts together what the alternatives were and what has been selected and why, for me to feel comfortable that we have indeed you're on the takeoff stage. There is no doubt that health is important, no doubt that education is important, but I find that on some of these complex areas where you require thought leadership, you require processes, you require decentralization, you require institutions, GST implementation, many say it's a great thing. To me, it should have been done much better. So I think the track record of the government on the more complex things which really require structural thinking and structural breakthrough, to me has been mediocre compared to the promise of 2014. But on many of the things which I mentioned earlier, it has been good.
Okay, fair point indeed. You've hit the nail on its head when you say some complex issues were conspicuous by their absence in the speech. But as we wrap this, Mr. Mittal, I'll come to you. Given the fact that he wanted to set the stage for 2019, the government will be in election mode. Will it have then the mind space to perhaps fix the macroeconomic vulnerabilities that are now coming on the horizon? CAD level is rising, fiscal deficit is going to be a challenge going forward, and many people believe divestment may not be the right approach to bridge the fisc. So there will be macroeconomic vulnerabilities that are coming to the fore. Inflation in any case is on the rise. We could perhaps end at levels of close to 5% and not 4% that the government and the RBI would want to. Will it have the mind space and the will to deal with some of these fault lines?
Well, I wish that the government certainly spends time on that. You did mention the fiscal deficit. So far, they have been able to manage it very well. I think I would be more worried on the revenue deficit being a pre-election year. And that is where I think we need to see the government needs to be judicious in seeing whatever needs to be done for that. Having said that, I think on the rising oil prices, I think more or less it's sort of not completely settled, but settling down. The rising protectionism is one area which will continue to haunt us for a little more longer time than what we can expect. But having said that, I also believe that while the government comes out with schemes, there is always an opportunity for the private sector. I mean, when we look at Ayushman Bharat, I see no reason why the private health care institutions, hospitals and all will not start building up outreach centers. And I think it's high time that every person, the last person in need of good medical facilities should not be able to do that because of the insurance policies or insurance schemes which are not there, and he or she doesn't have the money. And therefore, this Ayushman Bharat, which is going to be the largest healthcare scheme, is going to benefit the poorest of the poor in India. So that is the first thing. Second, also I believe the job of the Prime Minister is also to keep a very higher ambition and a higher target for what the country and what his government need to achieve. And in that I clearly see the India's space mission, which he talked about. A man or a woman will be in space by 2022. I believe this is ambitious, but not impossible, given the science and technology strides which India has made and demonstrated in the past. And I believe this will be a great tribute and salute to India at 75 when we celebrate in 2022.
Oh yes, indeed. I couldn't agree more with you on that. As we wrap up, I'm going to come to Shobhana Kamineni and let Sanjeev Aga have the last word. But quickly, what was your aha moment, and was there a letdown at all in the speech? Don't be diplomatically correct, Ms. Kamineni. What was your aha moment and what was your letdown?
Well, the aha was kind of expected, which was Ayushman Bharat, but I liked a lot of what he said about women inclusion. My letdown is that probably more could have been done in terms of addressing, the opportunities of India exporting, and while he did say that the Indian passport is more valuable, we're not making use of it, and there really wasn't too much about jobs. I worry about that. I worry about this large population. We might be number 5 in terms of economic prowess and growing, but I think that jobs have to catch up, and that's something that all of us have to be invested in, whether it's society or industry.
Sure. Sanjeev Aga, was there a moment in the speech when you felt like, what an idea, Sarji?
Sandeep, I like the emphatic way he came down on rapes, and particularly when he said that there have been retribution, or rather punishment, in a very swift time, and saying that there will be more of that in the days ahead. So at least in one area which all of us feel sickened by, there was a very clear-cut message from the Prime Minister. The thing which I didn't feel very enthusiastic about was his unnecessary running down of the previous government on some things like, it is unimaginable that they could have done what we've done. I think that was both an exaggeration and unnecessary. I mean, the previous government did many things wrong, but the Independence Day speeches, one could overlook those things.
Indeed, and especially from the ramparts of Red Fort, you are addressing the nation as the Prime Minister. We perhaps need to talk about a rising new India instead of delving into the past and apportioning blame there. But on that note, completely out of time here, thank you very much for putting it all in perspective. What corporate India makes of the Prime Minister's Independence Day speech, his 5th speech in this tenure, one that ticked many boxes, but a lot of conspicuous absent issues that perhaps still stand out.
Thanks for being with us on the India Development Debate.